Okay, let's begin, guys. So, a very good morning to everyone present here. We, the team of GDSC, are very happy to see the huge response that we are getting from the community, from the students and our peers. And we hope that keep getting such response and it increases as the time goes ahead. We are really happy. We got a total crowd of 100 plus on day one and day two. So we expect the same response today, and we'll begin today's event. Today's event is a special event. It's a guest event, and we have invited Mr. Himanshu Chatpar to conduct this event. I'll give you a brief introduction about Himanshu. He is a full stack developer. He has his expertise in React and Django REST frameworks. He is qualified. He has qualified the Facebook Hacker Cup round one, and he is an incoming software engineer at Zeus Learnings. Today, he is going to conduct the third day of Hack Week series, and the event is going to be on advanced JavaScript and EMAScript 6, that is ES6 script. We are very happy to have you here, Himanshu, and we are very excited to see what you have planned for all of us. So let us begin, and over to you, Himanshu.
Thank you, Mahesh, for the wonderful introduction. And let's start today's session. So today, what we are going to see about in JavaScript is the part that usually people miss. People learn basic JavaScript, then directly jump to React. So the part that missing causes a lot of problem and causes a huge gap in understanding. So this is where this session comes in. I try to collect all the concepts that are used in React and make a session out of it. So I found out uh, most of the uh, parts that we miss are usually from ES6. So ES6 and above syntax. So that's how the name came, modern JavaScript. So ES6 was introduced in 2016-17. So this is fairly recent, and after that, many other iterations came, and the syntax has gotten much cleaner. So today we'll focus mostly on syntax and working, and along with that, we'll see some theory behind how everything works. So I would like to clear the agenda. So first we'll start off with some facts about JavaScript. So I know many of people haven't really programmed in JavaScript. They have come from different background. Even I came from a C++ Python background. So I'll start with some facts about JavaScript, how variable declaration works, let, const, var, functional scoping and everything. Then we'll move on to functions. Functions are very different in JavaScript compared to other programs. Then we'll move on to array objects. The asynchronous JavaScript part we'll cover. We'll look into promises and fetch. Then we'll look into local storage. That is how to store data even when the browser is turned off. And then we'll look into modules. Modules are basically how do you get one piece of code that is present in one file into some other file. And then I'll show you a to-do project, which I hope after going through all of this, you'll be able to make it on your own. So with this session, I am trying to provide you the tools so that you can make such an project. I won't be making the to-do project. I'm expecting you to make it after you understand everything. Okay, so let's start with some facts about JavaScript. So JavaScript is an interpreted language. Interpreted language means that each line of code is compiled during runtime, and it uses JIT compilation. JIT is just-in-time compilations. So at the end moment, we compile it down for optimization purposes. Then it is a dynamically typed language. Dynamically typed means you don't need to give the variables a certain type. In C++, C, we declare variables with int, float, double, etc. This is not the case with JavaScript. In JavaScript, the type, interpreter figures out the type on its own. It also means that the type of data is determined during runtime. So there are two types. This is dynamically typed language. The other is statically typed language. So those are C, C++. We know the type of data during compilation. But here we don't know it during that. We know during runtime only. Only when the program starts executing, we get to know what type is it. So this part introduced a new language called TypeScript. because TypeScript is statically typed superset of JavaScript. So there is where TypeScript comes in. The third point is JavaScript is weakly typed language. So weakly typed language and strongly typed language are two spectrums. In weakly typed language, the conversion of data types is very simple and it usually occurs implicitly. So JavaScript is notorious for type conversions, as you can see, double equal to, triple equal to, stuff like that. So JavaScript is weakly typed. On the other hand, you have strongly typed language, which don't allow type conversion. So to convert type, you need to explicitly set the type. So that's how it works. Now, it supports functional programming and treats functions as first-class citizens. So functional programming is a new paradigm of programming. It's not actually new, but it's somewhat recently came into limelight. What functional programming means is, instead of object-oriented programming, what it does is it couples data and functionality into a single unit. Functional programming says that we have a certain piece of data. Now let us use functions to run on those. So how is it different? Well, we make sure the functions are pure functions in the sense that they don't change the data. The data is never mutated. So this is how functional programming works. In a brief introduction. Then JavaScript is single-threaded language. Single-threaded means it has only a single call stack. And since it has a single call stack, it can only do one task at a time. Okay. Now, most confusions in JavaScript stem from here. JavaScript itself is a synchronous language. Okay. Synchronous language means that it executes code line by line and in order. And before moving on to the next task, it makes sure it completes the current task it is running. And the last point I would like to say is JavaScript engine is heavily dependent on runtime environment in which it is executed to provide asynchronous capabilities. So I'm sure you might have not understand everything about the facts, but after the end of this session, I hope you can understand what all of this means. So the first thing I would like to start with is variable declaration. So with new features in JavaScript, the old feature was var. We can only declare variables with var, but now we can declare it with let and const too. Now, var declaration are lexically scoped. Lexically and functionally scoped are the same thing. They can be shadowed over return. Var declarations are not inside any functions and can be configured to be properties of the window in sloppy mode. So JavaScript has two modes, a strict mode and a sloppy mode. So what we are studying today is mostly based on sloppy mode. So var declarations are lexical. So let's jump into code now. So to declare a variable in JavaScript, what I do is where this is the variable name what I'll give. Suppose a, and it has some value hello. Now this is variable declaration. Now this where is functionally scoped. What does that mean? So for that, let's have a function. Initially, let's create a function print a. Print a. This function does only one thing. It console.logs a. Right. So on running this, this. Okay. So now I need to call the function. So after calling the function, we can see that hello is printed. Right. So now if I take the declaration inside this, it still works. It will still work. Hello. But now if I try to access a outside this function, outside the printf function, I'm trying to access a. Console.log. I'm trying to access a. Right. So now what happens is an error comes. The error is a is not defined. Right. So why is this error coming? Because, well, as I said, where are functionally scoped. So they are present inside a function. So the a lives from this line number 2 to line number 5. After that, I can't access a, but I can access a anywhere inside this function. So that is what I mean by functional scoping. So this is how where works. Where are lexically scoped. They can be shadowed and overwritten. What that means is I can have two variables of same name. Suppose I have another where a equals to 10. I can do this. It can be shadowed. Right. So over here, console.log a prints this 10 value, and this a refers to this one. So this is how it works. I can shadow it, and it can also be overwritten. So this a is 10. I can set a equals to hello. So this is how I can overwrite it too. Right. So console.log again. Let me have another console.log. Okay. Right. So you can see initially it was 10 on this console log. After that, on this console log, it became hello, and on this console log again it is hello. So a is now permanently hello until you change it again. Someone's mute. Can Vaishnavi, you please mute? Can you please mute yourself? So the next part is let and const. So how does let and const work is they are block scope. So the scoping for let and const is similar to languages like C. So they live and die inside a block, right? So inside if, else, or anywhere where you see this this curly braces, there is that's where let and const live and die. So let me show you an example. Here, I'll set let a equals to 10. Right. Over here, if I'm console.logging a, I can see the value of a as 10. Right. But if I'm looking the value of a over here, what I can see is I get an error. A is not defined. Why? Because a only lives between this, since it is declared with the let. If it was a var variable, as we know, var is functional scope. So this, it does not respect this block. It only respects the blocks of a function. So with var, I can see the value 10, right? Because this respects only functions. It doesn't care about this block, except in the case of functions. So that's how let and var differ. A is not defined. Now the third part is let and const. Both are block scope. This is block scoping. They live and die inside this block. So the next is const. So with const, the thing is, again, as the name suggests, it's a constant. Right. Again, I can't access A outside of it, but I can access A inside of it. Right. Like this. Now, if I try to change A equals to 20, gives an error. Assignment to constant variable. Right. So you can't reassign it to something. Now, the most confusing part people see is let's make a const object. So this is how objects are made in JavaScript, right? So now people let me just show you the object first. Console.log object. Here is the object. Now what I can do is object dot suppose name equals to Himanshu. I can do this, and this still works. Now why does this work? The constant here refers to the reference. Object has a reference to this object. So this reference is constant, not the object. The object is free to change, but the reference always refers to this object. It can't refer to some other object, right? So let me show you another object. Let object 2 equals to some new object. Let's see, name is suppose ABC. Right, this is a new object. Now I can't do something like object.name equals to object equals to object 2. Now this is an error. Why? Because I'm changing the reference. I can't change the reference with constant, but I can change the object. The object is free to change, but not the reference. So we have seen how let, const, and var works. Now the best practice is to use const as much as possible. If your data changes, use let, and try to avoid using var, because var is functionally scoped. So it pollutes the lexical scoping. It basically pollutes the window object as well as the functions in which it lives. So try using const. If the data changes, use let. Try avoid using where. So again, this is what I wanted to say about block scope. So block scope variables are let and const, and they are scoped to the nearest enclosing block and cannot be accessed outside of it. Let is used to refer to variables that may change in the future, and const is used to declare a read-only reference to the value. Right? It is a reference to the value. So the value, if the value is mutable, like in the case of object that is mutable, it can change, but the reference cannot change. The const statement does not allow redeclaration or reassignment of variables. This is valid for let too. A let does not allow redeclaration or reassignment in the same scope. Now, functional lexical scoping, these are declared with where, and they are functional scope variables. It refers to the function in which they are declared and can be accessed freely inside the whole function. So this is what I wanted to say about let and const. If you have any questions, you may ask now about scoping. Okay, so let's move on. The next important part about JavaScript is functions, right? So functions are first class citizens. This is what I said in the first slide too. So what does this mean? Well, in JS, functions are treated can be treated as regular variables. So you can assign function to a variable, you can pass function as a variable, or you can return functions like a variable. So this is what it means to be a first class citizen. So how do we know if we are using a function as a variable or we are calling the function? So the difference is when you write the function name and put these parentheses, this open close brackets, you're essentially calling the function. This is a function call. What function call does is goes and executes the function, the code that is present over here. Now, if I just write the function name without the brackets, I'm treating the function as a variable. Okay, so let me show you an example. Let's clear this. Let me write a function. This is how we define a function. Function name. Let's say the name is greet, and what this does is console.log greetings from GDSC. Right. This is what it does. Now, when I'm doing greet with parentheses, this is a function call. Right. So what this does is it goes, looks up the function definition, it sees a greet function, executes it. Right. Now, what if I remove this part? It doesn't do anything. Right. Why? Because I'm not telling it to go and execute the function. I'm just treating it as a variable. So what I can do is I can create another variable. So let another greet. Right. So I can assign this to another variable. Now I can use another greet and execute this. So this also refers to this greet function. So I get greetings from GDSC. But if I do this, what this means is it will go execute the function, get the return value, and that return value is assigned to this. I'm not assigning a function here. In this case, I'm assigning a return value. So we get an error. What error? Another greet is not a function. Why is not a function? Because I have executed the code here. When I execute the code, I get a return value. By default, the return is undefined. If I'm not returning anything, I get an undefined return. So that is that value is saved in another greet. So that's why when I try to execute it, it gives an error that it is not a function. So this is how we can treat it as a variable. Without, whenever you see a function without parentheses, it means we're treating it as a variable. So we can do three things with this. We can assign one function to another function, right? Like this. We can pass function as an argument, or we can return some functions. So let me show you those two. Right. So let me create a new function. Function greet Himanshu. What this does is, uh, so it takes in a parameter another function. Let's suppose it takes in a greet function, right? So what I can do is I can execute the greet function, and then I can console.log from Himanshu, right? And okay, so let me execute greet Himanshu. So when I'm executing this, so the first thing you may notice is I'm not passing any parameters, right? So it will give me an error because I'm not passing anything. So by default, undefined is passed, and this is not a function. So I can pass a function like this, greet. When I'm doing this, I'm essentially passing this greet function that I have defined over here. This is the function I'm passing. So when I'm passing this function, greet gets the value of this function, and I can console.log that. Let me save. Sorry, I didn't save. So I can see greetings from GDSE and from Himanshu. So I would like to show this in with the help of a debugger. Okay, sorry. So and let me connect the script tag, script with source as main.js. Now I can execute this code. So let's go into sources. The sources, I'll this is my code, and I'm setting a breakpoint over here. Right. So let me refresh the page, and this is paused over here. So now I'm showing step-by-step execution of the function. So you can see script. I have another greet that is a function. F stands for function. So when I execute this function, step inside function call, I can see here. Here in the local scope, you can see greet. Greet is this function called greet. It refers to this, right? So now this greet is local to this because I have passed it over here. Now I can execute this greet function. So when I execute this, you can see it reaches here. So on executing greet, it knows its definition is here, so it goes to execute the code over here. Now this piece of code is executed, the function returns, and we can continue our execution from this line. So on this line, as the console.log suggests, we'll log the value, and this function essentially is over now. So it returns over here, and this is how the function ends. Okay. So on the console, we can see greetings from GDSE and from Himanshu. So this is how it works. So I passed a function. The difference between this and this, I think, would be clear now. When I'm doing this, I'm executing the function here itself, and whatever the value is left, that is what passed as a parameter. But if I'm doing this, the function is getting passed. So let me show you once again over here. Let's execute this. So again, this will not work. Why? Because I'm executing the function here itself. On execution, this piece of code runs. Here, this piece of code runs, and by default, undefined is returned. So when that is returned, I'm calling get Himanshu with an undefined value. So I'm trying to execute undefined over here. That doesn't fly with JavaScript because how can you execute undefined? So I hope I'm making myself clear. The third part, what we can do is we can return functions, right? we can return functions too. So greetings. So how can we return function? Again, it's as simple as return the name of the function. So this is how it works, right? So what I can do is here, I'll show you. This is very interesting. So when I'm running greet Himanshu, right, it requires a function greet. So let's provide it a function greet. Uh, Now, when this executes, what it does is it returns another function. So I can execute that function too directly. Right. So here we get greetings from Himanshu, that is run here. Then the greet function that I passed in is also returned. So I can execute that too. Because it is a function. So I am executing that. So this line of code is executed. So this is how it works. So I'll just show you once again in a debugger. So here is my breakpoint. I'm executing the function greet Himanshu. On running it, I'm running this console.log and I'm returning this greet function, right? So the difference between, again, this is the same thing. When I put parentheses over here, it is executing the function and getting the return value. But this is returning the function itself. So I'm returning the function itself. Since I'm returning the function itself, I can execute that function to over here by putting additional parentheses. So whenever I'm putting parentheses, it means I'm executing a function. So this was how we can assign functions to a variable, pass functions as a variable, return functions like a variable. And when I put parentheses, it is calling the function. When I'm not putting parentheses, it means treating the function as a variable. Now, what are callback functions? This is something you might have heard a lot. Callback functions are functions that are passed as arguments to other function, right? So in our case, I've passed greet as a callback function. Basically, what this means is usually when we pass a callback function, let me go back to the previous example. So in this line of code, what I'm doing is I'm passing in greet. So this greet function is a callback function. Why is it a callback function? Basically, I'm passing a function. Now it's the job of this function, greet Himanshu, to call the actual function greet. Right. So it essentially quote unquote calls back this function greet. So that's why it's called callback function. These are functions that are passed as arguments to other functions. Now the function is called back, but the function receiving it as one of the parameters. Now it's the job of this function to call this function, the greet function that is essentially passed. And this introduces asynchronicity in a single-threaded language. We'll look at this a bit later, but this is how it works. So, any doubts in how we are using functions as a variable? Okay, so let's move on. Please explain two modes. Okay, the two modes are basically, there are two modes in React, right? Strict mode and the other is sloppy mode. The mode we use normally, this mode. This is sloppy mode. So to use strict mode, what you do is use, I guess, strict. I'm not sure about the syntax, but somehow you declare this is in strict mode. I'm not sure about the syntax. But what that does is, there are some features that are changed in between two modes. So by default, suppose there is a variable here where a equals to 10, right? Now, on declaring this, I'll show you in the debugger. Inspect process like this, right? And I'm refreshing the page, right? So when I run this, I'm running this, right? Now, what I can do is, So window refers to this tab. Window is this tab object. So I can access window.a. It gives me a value 10. So what this line of code did was it added a to the global window object. As you can see, the window object has value a inside it. Actually, this tab itself has some value a now stored inside of it. This window has lot of properties associated with it. Let me show you. This is the window. It has a lot of properties associated with it. So this is a what we introduced. It doesn't need to be a. It can be anything. Anything that is declared with var in the global scope is associated with the window object now. So where I can say hello. No, let's do a hello because otherwise the function will go very down. Let's execute this. Now window dot a hello. So see, now this is associated with the window object. Now this is bad practice. Why? Because you're polluting the window object. The window object should only contain essential information about how the tab behaves and certain other functionalities like console.log and fetch and other set timeouts and web APIs and other such stuff, not variables that I'm storing. The window doesn't need to know these variables. So this is what happens in sloppy mode. So if I use strict mode, this variable will not get attached to the window, right? So there are other 2-3 certain subtle differences that I encourage you to read upon in sloppy and strict mode. So your frameworks and libraries usually prefer to use strict mode since this does not pollute the global object being the window. So whatever I declare with var in sloppy mode is essentially attached to the window object, which is bad practice. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so let's continue. Next, yeah, we saw this part. Next, there are many different ways to write functions in JavaScript. JavaScript is a pretty expressive language. So the way I was declaring functions is the oldest way of declaring functions in JavaScript. So however we are declaring functions this way, right? These are how we declare functions in JavaScript in the old. This is the old way of declaring it, of using functions. So then what are the new ways? Well, I'll show you all the ways. Okay, so this is the normal way, what we have been doing so far. The next way is using function expression. These are named function expression. Basically, what I can do is, let me get rid of all of this. So let a equals this. So now this is using named function expression. So whenever a function is assigned to a variable, that is called a function expression. So now a is a function expression, right? So I can execute a, right? This is named function expression, basically assigning function to a variable. Next thing what we can do is anonymous functions. What are anonymous functions? They are functions without any names. So if I'm doing this, I don't need to name the function greet. It can be just this, right? And this still works. Why? Because, well, a has a reference to this function. The function may not have any name, but a has a reference to it. So I can refer to this function using a. Make sense? This is anonymous function expressions. Now the next is arrow syntax. So this arrow syntax is the ES6 way. That is the new way of writing functions. So let's make a function called add, right? So function add will accept two variables a and b, and what we'll do is return a plus b. return a plus b. Right. On executing a, I can console.log the value. Console.log a. So as you can see, I have executed without parentheses. It shows me a function a. So since I want to execute the function, I'll do this, and now the function will execute it. So to execute this, I need to provide two values. So let's add 3 and 2. As you can see, the result is 5. Now, how do I convert this function to an arrow function? Well, you can do this by removing the function keyword. I don't need it. The function keyword can go away. Next, I can put an arrow over here, and that's it. That's how you can declare arrow functions. So this essentially works the same way. So what did we do? We dropped the function keyword. The function keyword, this was dropped. Function, and there was a name, right? Add, suppose. So what I did was, this was a regular function. Now, since I'm assigning this function to a variable, I don't need to name it. I can get rid of the name. Now I want to use arrow functions. So I can get rid of this function keyword too. And instead of that keyword, I'll put this function, this arrow. And that's how we get arrow functions. So there is a subtle difference between arrow function and the functions that are declared with the keyword functions, right? This function add a comma b and return a plus b, right? So a plus b. So this function and this function have little difference. Okay, so the major difference is, well, you can call this function before it is initialized in the code. So I'll show you an example. Let me edit it. Block comment. Right. So now what I can do is I can run add before it is before I show its definition. This is illegal in many languages, but in JavaScript it isn't. Console.log add 2, 3, and I get 5. Why is it working in this way? Well, JavaScript interpreter goes through the code twice. The first part, it collects all the functions. So now during the first part, since it collects all the functions, it knows a certain function exists. So that's why I can run it. And during the first pass, it does two things. It basically collects all the functions and sets all the variables to a value called undefined. So that is actually beyond the scope of this talk, but I would encourage you to read more if you are not sure about how this works. So this is how it works. You can call functions before its definition. This is illegal in many languages like C and I guess Python too, right? So this is how JavaScript works. Because it goes through the function twice, it knows and adds functions and creates a reference to it before running any code. So the first run is basically just going through the code, remembering all the function definitions and assigning all variables to undefined. The second run, it actually executes the code. In the second run, it goes, it sees this and executes this piece of code. So that's how it works. Okay, but this works only with function declared with this keyword and not function expression too. Function expression also don't have this luxury. This luxury is only available to proper functions. You can't do this with arrow functions. If I try to do this with arrow functions, right? So it will show me cannot access A before initialization. Look, the error message is cannot access A before initialization. It knows A exists. It knows that A exists, but it cannot access it before its initialization. So this is what I was talking about, two pass. It knows, the JavaScript code knows each and every variable, each and every function, but it does not let you access it before initialization. That's the part with let. Okay, so I hope this is clear. the arrow function, and the next part is function with default parameters. So how default parameters work is I can set a value b equals to some 10, right? So b equals to 10. So now I only need to provide one value. The next value is taken by default. As you can see, the answer is 13. But if I provide two values, 3 and 5, it will use the value that I provided. So if I'm providing two values, it uses the value I provided. If there is no value provided, it uses a default value. So these are all the different ways to write functions in JavaScript. The main takeaway would be how to write arrow functions. So how to write arrow function is you drop the function keyword, you drop the name, you set it to some variable using a function expression, right? And then you put in this arrow and the curly braces. Now the main difference between arrow function and this function would be the value of this. So this always refers to the object calling the function. This refers to object calling the function, and but what the value of this is actually differs in arrow functions and normal functions. So in normal function, this refers to the object calling it, but in arrow function, this refers to the lexical scope. So this difference is something I need you to be aware of. If you know what this keyword actually represents, you would understand. But if not, just be aware there is a certain difference between the value of this in arrow function and this function. Okay, so arrow functions have this set to the lexical this. So what lexical this means is, again, lexical always refers to the function. So we basically check the function inside which arrow function is present, right? And set its value of this to the particular value. So usually we use arrow function inside some particular function, right? So I can check the value of this in the outer function and set that value of this to the inner function. So this is how, quote unquote, this keyword works. Okay, and the second difference between sloppy mode and strict mode is that when you set the value of this, by default it is bound to the window object. This window object, right? This window object is where this is. I'll show you console.log this, right? So this refers to the window object in sloppy mode. In strict mode, the value of this is set to undefined. Inside your the JS file, the value of this is set to window in sloppy mode. In strict mode, the value of this is set to undefined. So that's one other difference between sloppy mode and strict mode. Okay, so any questions on this?
Guys, if you have any questions, please ask them. No problem. Either unmute yourself or you can ask on chat, whatever you prefer.
Okay, so let's continue. We have seen the different ways to write functions. Now, what I want to show you is higher order functions, right? So this is essentially the continuation of first class citizen. So I showed you I can use functions as variables, right? So essentially this is the continuation part of that. Now, what are higher order functions? These are functions that receive a function as either input or return a function as output. Cool. So the functions I was writing, greet Himanshu and everything, those were higher order functions. Why? They receive, either they receive a function as input, or they return a function as output. So on array, this is specifically for arrays. On arrays, there are 3 higher order functions. All these functions, they're very similar. So all these functions, what they do is iterate over an array and perform some computation on each of it. They collect the result of the computation and result it in form of a new array. So I'll show you an example. Let's take an array, let numbers equals to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. These are my numbers. Now, what I want to do is, I want to create a new numbers array. New numbers array, right? Numbers. This is also an array that has the squares of all these values. So it will have 100. So it will have 20 into 20, that is 400, and that will have 30 into 30, which is, I guess, 900, and so on. Right? I need to make this array. So traditionally, how we would do is with the help of loops. So I want to show you how we do it traditionally. So this is how we do. So we create a new square numbers, right? Square number be an empty array initially. Now what I'll do, I'll loop through each of the numbers. So let I equals to 0, I less than numbers of length, and I plus plus. And now what I'll do, for each number in squared numbers, I'll push the value dot push. So push is a function that appends the, as you can see in the autocomplete too, it adds new element to the end of the array, right? So this is what push does. So now I can do is square numbers, this array dot push. What value I should push? I'll push numbers I into numbers I, right? And now I can console.log square numbers. So I'll get the square of the numbers, right? So this is how we do it traditionally. So if I want the cube, what I can do is I can put numbers I into numbers I into numbers I, right? So this will essentially give me the cubes. Now the main thing is, well, this works, but JavaScript has better ways to do this. So this is where higher order functions come in. So the difference between number square and number cube. So this was cubing. So for squaring, what I do, I would essentially copy paste this code and do this, right? And create a new array. Create a new number. Square numbers will be this, and let cubed numbers equals to this, and this into numbers are, right? And squared numbers will become cube numbers. Cube numbers. And I can get square numbers and cube numbers. Here console.log square numbers, right? So this is how we would do traditionally. Now we can see this logic is basically duplicated. The only thing that changed was this part, right? So what I can do, I can create a higher order function. So I'll show you a higher order function that does this. So let me write the logic over here. So what logic I'm using, I'll write it in the logic. So it takes in the number, suppose num, and for square what I used to do was I used to return num into num. This is what I used to do. Now for higher order function, what I'll do is I'll create a function called mymap, right? This is my function. So this mymap function, what it does is it takes in an array, takes in the numbers array, and it takes in the logic. Now, what it does is it creates a new array. Let new array be an empty array for now. Now, what I can do is the similar code. I loop through each value in the array. So for let I equals to 0, I less than numbers dot length, and I'll go I plus plus. Right. This part is the same. Now, for each value of new array, what I can push is the logic. I'll call the function called logic, and pass in the numbers I value. And now I can return a new array. So when I do console.log, function mymap, I'll call the mymap function with numbers and logic function, right? So with this, I get the squared. So if I want the cube, what I can do, console.log, essentially I can call mymap with numbers as a variable that is passed, and I can pass an anonymous function over here. So it takes in a number num, and it returns arrow function. It returns num into num into num. Now, since this code is a single line, I can drop the braces too. So we can see this is how it works. So this logic can also be substituted with this num, that is num into num. So now we have made a function that takes in another function as an argument called logic, and I'm calling that logic over here. So this is how higher order functions work. So as you can see now, for cubes, I just need to pass in the logic part. Rest of the part is already handled for over here. This looping and pushing, everything is same. Just the logic changes. So I just need to pass the logic. Now I can go. Okay, is there any doubt in this case how this is working? So I'll show you once in the debugger. Right. So essentially, let's go with square. Right. So when I execute this, step into this function. So you can see my map. This function is called. I'm creating a new array. Then I'm looping through the array. So I'm looping through this. So okay, and you can see the logic. The logic is essentially this function. So it's stored logic over here. So now I'm stepping into, and this loop runs. I'm pushing the value into the array. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So now this function is executing. So this function executed. Now it's returning 100. So after returning 100, I'm pushing this value. As you can see, I've pushed this value. So now a new array has value 100. Again, I'm going through the loop. And in the new array, I'm pushing the value of this logic. I'm calling this function logic. So it goes to the definition, executes this logic, and whatever value it returns is getting pushed. So you can see now it has 400. So this is how our code is working. So for cube also it will be similar. So is there any doubt in this? Any questions you want to ask?
Can you show the logic function once?
Which
Logic
function? This one or?
No, scroll upward.
Even
Again.
more?
Yes. I
This
want
one,
to see
ma'am.
the arguments or the variables passed.
So there are two variables passed to it. the
Not
numbers.
this one. Yes, yes, this one. Okay, okay, okay.
So I'm not actually passing the logic to that. Was just for example. What
Yes,
the
yes, I
value
got
is
it.
passed. What's passed is this. This anonymous function is getting passed over here for this line, line 14. For line 15, this anonymous function is passed as logic. Okay, and these are my arguments.
Yes, got it.
So moving on. Okay, I can take this a step further too. Since JavaScript is a very extensible language, what I can do is I can set this as some prototype function, right? So I can set array dot prototype dot my map, right? So now what this line does is every array object has a prototype method, and this prototype function has various functions defined in it. Now I'm adding my custom function called mymap inside this. So what this does is it makes this mymap function available to every array that is created or will ever be created with respect to my code, right? So everything in this file or the files that I'm using will have access to function called mymap. So now I don't even need to pass numbers to it, right? I can get rid of this numbers. So I can get rid of these numbers here, right? But how will I access what this is? So again, the answer is this. If you know this, what how this works, is this refers to the object calling it. So if the numbers object is calling this function, this will be set to this array. So this is how it would work. So instead of this, I would do this array, right, and return the new array. So instead of calling it like this, what I can do is I can have numbers dot my map, right? This is my custom function that I've built now. I just need to pass the logic. So num is getting transferred into num, right? So this is how it works. What error? My map is notified. Okay, sorry. This piece of code is wrong because my map doesn't work this way now. So that code is wrong. But this is how it works. So essentially, this my map is now a method on numbers. On in fact any array. So to prove this, I can go inspect. I can do array dot my map. Do I need to save it? Array dot prototype dot my map. Yeah. So this my function is now present on every array. So as you can see over here, this is what the function is defined as, right? So this is how JavaScript is extremely extensible. You can pretty much do everything. You can change its internal workings too. Okay, so this was an introduction to how custom higher order function works. So this, what my map I have built is basically a smaller version of existing feature called map, right? So there are three functions: map, filter, reduce. So there are these three functions. So these are higher order functions. These functions are used to iterate over the array and perform some computation of it. As you can see, I've iterated over the array and performed some computation. The computation is present in this logic part, right? So this is how the computation works. Then what they do is they collect the result of the computation and return it in the form of a new array. So exactly this procedure is followed. So you create an empty array on and map each of the input to some output and put it in an array and return the new array. So that's how map works. So instead of doing all this, I can use custom map features. So what map does is what it does is takes in each element as input, element as input and maps it to a output. And this is the first part it does. The second part, what it does is it collects all these results and returns a new array. Returns a new array. That's it. So, for example, numbers dot map, right? So map takes an callback function. So similar to our last example over here. Over here, that's my map. I have passed a callback function. So that's how this map works too. So console.log numbers. Now this map method is already available on every array. So this map, it requires a callback function. So I'm passing the callback as cube. Num equals to, it returns num into num into num, right? So this is how it works. I'm getting rid of this. So as you can see, it cubed all the values. So this, what I have implemented over here, is basically a polyfill for map, you can say. Some older browsers might not have this functionality. So for that, we use polyfill. So we can put array.prototype.whatever function we want to polyfill and write custom code for it. But essentially, most of the browsers nowadays have access to functions like map filter reduce. So this is what I wanted to show you. So map, what it does is it iterates through all three of these. Map filter reduce, they iterate through all of these and basically iterate through all of these and map every element. Basically every element. So 10 is mapped to 1000, 20 is mapped to 20 into 20 into 20, whatever that is. 30 is mapped to 13 to 13 to 30, whatever that is. Now, after mapping all of these, they are again returned in an array. So this is exactly what map does. So next part is filter. So what filter does is, filter used to filter some filter the array according to some condition. So I'm changing this array. So let me make it 20, 33, 46, 53, 57. Okay. So now what I want to do is, I want to make a new numbers array. It has all the even numbers, right? So again, the traditional way, what it would be, loop through the array, basically make a new array called even numbers or something, loop through the array and check if the number is even or odd. And if it is even, push it into the new array, else don't push it into the new array, right? So this logic is simplified by filter. So what filter does is numbers dot filter. So the filter, again, it is similar. It takes in a callback function, right? So callback function is whatever. So basically these callback functions, what they do is they take in what do you need to check for each variable. So what map used to take was numbers.map. So the callback function over here asked, what do you need me to do for each element? The filter here asks, what do you need me to check for each value, right? So for each value, I want to check if it's even or odd. So for each value, I want to check if value odd 2 equal to 0 or not. This is what I want to check. So value mod 2 equal to 0. If it's true, it will return true. So that's how it will work. So I can console.log this. Console.log. And we can see. It gave me even numbers. If I want the odd numbers, I can just change this to not equals to, and it gave me all the odd numbers. So this is how filter works. So filter takes in a callback function. In the callback function, you need to specify what do you want to check for each of these values. For each of the value, the value first takes value 11, then 20, then 30, then 46, then 53, then 67. So for each of these value, I want to check if it's divisible by 2 or not. So mod 2 is not equal to 0 or not. So this returns true if it's an odd number. So if it's true, I'll put in the new array. If it's false, I won't put it in the new array. That's it. So this value is included in the new array if this evaluates to true. If I just set it to true, so every element will come in the array. See, each of these came in the array. So this value dictates whether you want that value in the array or not. So this was filter. Any questions on filter? Okay, when you should not opt for TypeScript. Technically, what TypeScript is it provides additional type checking. So I've already told JavaScript is dynamically typed language, right? So since it is dynamically typed, we know the type at runtime. If I want to know the type at compile time, I use TypeScript. Now, why do I want to know the value at compile time? That's because I can essentially get rid of some errors. Like by default, when you enter something in a from, by default it is string, right? The value that returns from forms and input inboxes, etc. is string. So now, if I want to do number addition, something like that, so instead by chance I'll do string concatenation, because those two elements that I received as strings, if I forget to pass them as integers, right? So for these type of type checking, we use TypeScript. With TypeScript, we can define what type is before compiling. So essentially, TypeScript, the compiler figures out if this is exactly the type you're going to get or not. And then it gives errors depending on if something's wrong. So when should we use not opt for TypeScript? I mean, TypeScript, for TypeScript, you need to have additional, you need to set up types, custom types, and do additional type checking. So if you don't want to do that, which I don't recommend, it's always better to have additional type checking. So if you don't want to do that, you can not opt for TypeScript, but this is not something I would suggest. If you know TypeScript, definitely go for it. Okay. So let's move on. Next is reduce. So reduce is used to reduce down to a single value. So essentially, if I want to add all of these values, right? So what I can do is I'll use dot reduce method. So numbers dot reduce. I can reduce, and now reduce is a bit different. It takes two parameters, right? It takes the basically accumulator, and the another, it takes the actual value itself. So the number. What accumulator is, we'll come to it in a second, right? And what it does is it maps to something and returns the accumulator. Returns accumulator. Not return, return accumulator. So this is how the skeleton is. Okay, I'll show you the normal code first. Suppose I want to add all of these numbers. Okay, let me just edit this out. Right. So if I want to add all of these numbers, add all these numbers. So what I can do is, this is pretty simple. I can make a new numbers array, new numbers, right? Which are let sum, initial sum is 0. Now I can iterate, let I equals to 0, I less than numbers dot length, I plus plus, and what I can do is sum plus equals to numbers I, right? And then I can console.log sum to get the number. So this is what the addition is. Now over here I have specified an initial value called sum. The initial value is 0. So what I can do it is I can specify the initial value over here. After the callback function, I need to specify the initial value. So initial value of the sum is 0. Cool. Next thing is number refers to the current number that is under consideration. So in the first part, it will take number as 11, then it will take 20, then it will take 33, then it will take 44, and so on. Basically, it will loop through this. So what I can do is accumulator plus equals to number, and then return accumulator. So essentially what accumulator is storing is the current sum until this index. So until this index, sum is 0. Until this index, it is 0 plus 11, that is 11. Why? Initially it was 0 because I passed in 0. So I'll console.log this. I'm log this code. And I'll console.log this. Right? Cons num is this. And console.log it. No. So I can see I got the value 230. So this is how it works. So what it does is accumulator stores the value until which the current sum is there. So let us run this in debugger. So this is okay. I can't really show you this in debugger because it won't recognize this code because this essentially is a full function for it. Yeah, it won't. So essentially what it does is it goes through each of these numbers. So this is the initial value. So initial value was first set 0 over here. In our case, we set the 0 value over here. Next, what we did was sum plus equals to number I. So that piece of code is done with the help of accumulator. Accumulator plus equals to num basically sets, accumulator stores how much the sum is until this index and then adds the num and then returns the value. So now if I have sum from here till here and I add 46. So what do I get? I get sum from here till here. Now if I have sum here to here and I add 53, so what do I get? I get sum from here till here. So this is how it works. And if I have sum here to here, I have 60, I add 67, so I get the sum of the whole array, and then it stops because after this array has no value. So we get this value. So this is how reduce works. So we learned 3 things: map, reduce, filter. Map, in map the callback function takes in what each number is mapped to, on what input, what the logic should be. The filter code, the callback takes one thing, that is when should we basically the callback function should either return true or false, and if it returns true, it is included in the array. If it returns false, it is not included in the array. Then third part is accumulator. So accumulator takes 2 inputs. The callback takes 2 inputs. What? It takes the accumulator, that is the current sum until this number, or current computation up till this current number, and the number, that is the number we are processing now, and the initial value is provided with the help of this. So this is how we compute with the help of reduce. So any question in map, filter, reduce? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, now most of the heavy part was done. Now this is basically just syntax and syntactic sugar, which basically means is this basically provides a shortcut way of doing stuff. So destructuring is pretty similar. So not similar, destructuring is pretty easy. So what it does is it provides a shorthand for extracting data from objects and maps them into variables. Okay. So extracting data from objects, or okay, let's look at this with example itself. So let an object be suppose first will be, let's suppose, Bruce, last, let's suppose Wayne, and alias let's suppose it will be Batman, right? So this is the object. Now if I want to store first in a variable, what I can do is let first equals to object dot first, let second, sorry, let last equals to object dot last, and let alias equals to object dot alias. Right. So now I can console.log first last alias. So this piece of code is pretty simple, as you can see. It just shows Bruce Wayne and Batman. So how this works is object.first essentially reads this property. Objects in JavaScript are just key value pairs. This is the key, this is the value. So how do I access key? I do dot key. And how do I get the value? When I do object.key, it returns the value. It's just that. So object.first returns this value. Object.last returns this value. Object.alias returns this value. So I can get first, last, alias like this. The easier way of doing this is called destructuring. So what I can do is first, last, and alias equals to object. Now I can console.log first, last, alias. Right. So this is how it works. So instead of writing those 3 lines of code, I have condensed it into a single part. So what if I want to rename this? So I can put a colon over here and F, last as L, alias as A, right? So the first, last, these need to be the names of properties. And if you want to rename the property name, you can put a colon over here and you can rename it like that. So essentially F, L, alias, A. So this is how it works. So the main thing is these need to be a property. I can't randomly put anything. But after putting a colon, I can rename it. If I don't want the property name to be first, I want it to be F. So I put a colon and rename it like that. So this is how you destructure an object. The second part is destructuring an array. So destructuring an array works this way. So this is my array, suppose. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So destructuring an array, what I can do is I just need to change whatever it is. So I can first, second, third, and so on. So on will be rest. I'll get to rest in a bit of time. But for now, you can see I can get access to F, S, and C like that. F, S, C. So this is how I can use arrays, right? So instead of doing obj 0, let f equals to, let s equals to obj1. Instead of doing this is the shortcut way of doing it, right? So this is destructure. This is spread and rest operators. We'll get to them in a second. So this is how it works. Destructuring works. So destructuring provides a shorthand for extracting data from objects and map them into variables. So destructuring an object, we use let variable. So this variable one needs to be an key on the object. Okay. If it's a key on the object, then I can rename it to name1. Similar over here. I can do this with arrays too. But I don't think you need to do this. You can directly do it anyways. Okay. To keep the variable's name same as property, you can skip this part. If you want the variable, the property name to be same as the variable name, you can skip this part. If you want to rename it, you use colon and the new name. Okay. And to change the name of property, you can pass additional. Okay, and you can use default values too. So this is how destructuring works. So I think this is more than enough for destructuring part. We'll get to spread and rest. So any doubt in destructuring? For array, we use square brackets, and for objects, we use curly braces. That's the only difference. Okay. After destructuring, the next part is spread and rest. So what I did over here, dot dot dot, that is spread and rest. So spread is used to spread the contents of the object as multiple elements. Okay, the most confusing part here is spread and rest both have same notation. Both are dot dot dot. So for how do you know if it's spread or how do you know it's rest? Just look at the context in which it is being used. Okay. So spread essentially is used to spread the contents of object as multiple elements. So this is my object. Let's change this to array. Right. ARR. Right. So if I console.log array, you see this is clearly an array. Right. So if I do dot dot dot, it gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what it did is it spread all of these into single parts. So now 1, 2, 3, they are all different. They don't belong to an array. So this is what spread does. It spreads everything across. Right. So spread value of an array into multiple elements. So we do dot 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 array name. Now it spreads the whole array into different elements. Now the second thing is to spread the key values pair. We can do this with object too. Right. So we can do dot 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 object name. So instead of an array over here, we can use an object too. Let object is suppose first so with objects it works like this. So we need to put in braces and then dot 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 and then object. So this essentially spreads the object. You can see the object itself, but this is how you can make a clone too. So if I want to clone an object, I can do new object is essentially a clone of this. So dot 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 obj. So this new object is now a clone. So what I can do is new object dot first is equal to not Bruce, right? Now if I print console.log object and new object, you can see they are both different. So this first is Bruce. I have changed this. So you can see this change is not reflected in the first object. So this is how we can clone objects using dot 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 syntax. If I didn't do this and I directly did object, you can see both are not Bruce. This one and this one too. Because we are just sharing the reference. We are not creating a new object. So to create a new object, we use spread syntax. So dot 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 object like this. Now we have two objects, this object and new object. They both are separate. They don't reference to the same object. So this is how spread works. Now what rest does is it is the opposite of spread. Now spread used to spread everything. Rest is used to collect everything. So rest operator is used to collect the rest or remaining elements into a single object. Now to collect the remaining into a single array, we use dot 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 new array. Right. So I pretty much showed you this before. We just toggle comment this. Like let first second dot 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 rest equals to array, right? So now if I console.log rest, you can see rest is this array 345. So it collects the rest of the thing and puts it in a single array. So this is how rest works. It is used to collect everything. Spreads everything. Rest collects everything. Now, since this works with arrays, you can work similarly with objects too. So you can collect all the remaining objects in dot dot dot. So let's have a nested object. So inside of this object, let's have another object. So address is, let's say, city Gotham and country USA, right? So if I console.log the object now, let's get rid of this. And see, this is a nested object, right? So with spread and rest operator, we can collect nested objects too. So for example, let new object is, let's get first one. Our first has F. Sorry. Let collect first as F and collect the rest of them in this rest object, right? And this is essentially the object. Now, when I console.log rest, you can see I've collected the rest. I've destructured this. So this is decomposed into first and the rest. So the first is present in F and everything else I have collected in this rest object. So when I console.log the rest, I can see I have last and this nested object. So if I want the first name too, I can put F over here, F comma. So I can see Bruce has come. So this is how spread and rest works. So this, since it is on the left side, it is used for collecting. On the right, you can even somewhat reason through that way. On the left side, we are collecting the variables, right? We are assigning something to it. So over here, it's rest. On the right side, we are spreading the values. Okay. So you need to look into what context it is being used. So why is it useful? It is used for variadic functions. So variadic functions are functions that can take in multiple arguments. You don't know how many arguments, but it can take multiple arguments. So for that, we can use spread operators. And the rest operator is used for collecting objects. So, and the operator acts spread or rest depending on the context and the usage. So, any questions? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, computed properties are something that allow us to calculate the values during runtime, right? They allow us to compute the value inside square brackets and use it as a property name on an object. So let's get rid of this. Right. So let suppose fruit equals to apple, right? And what we can do is let create an object, with this is called computed property. When I put these braces, I'm computing the property, right? And I'll say orange, and I'll console.log object. So console.log object. So when I run this, you see value fruit. The value this is computed. So what the value of fruit is, I'm getting it over here, and I'm assigning it to orange. So this is how it works. Anything inside this is computed. I can't directly put fruit here. If I put fruit here, what will happen is we treat fruit as the key, not apple as the key. I want the apple to be used as a key, so I put in these brackets. Now I get apple as the key. Why? Because any expression inside this square bracket is essentially computed during runtime. So it calculates what the value is and then uses it. These are computing properties. So why are they useful? They're useful for dealing with event handling. So in React, during event handling, we usually keep the name property on the HTML element the same as that we give it a name value, and that name value is essentially used to identify the name in the state. So that same value can be reused with computing e.target.name. So instead of fruit, usually an event is passed. So e.target.name. So essentially, this will compute the name of the element or the node on which the event was fired, and I'll get the name property of it. So that's how this works, and this is why it's useful. And next, I wanted to show you a bit about Babel. Since we are using modern JavaScript, we can use Babel, which is a tool to transpile it back to old JavaScript. Because many browsers that you might want to target do not support this level of level of modern code we are using. So for that we use tools like Babel. So Babel is used to transform all the code into old JavaScript code. So I'll just show you an example. So you write code. Okay, use strict. Oh yeah. So this is how strict works. Use strict in brackets. Okay. So here for these are all the settings you can use. So for you need to enable force all transform to get code that runs on all browsers, right? So there is a setting over here called force all transforms. This, when I enable it, it will give me the code that pretty much runs on any browser. So if I'm using something like computed properties, which is pretty new, so let const root equals to hello, sorry, apple. Let's keep the same example, and const object equals to this with computed property as fruit, and I'll put in here orange. So you can see this code got transformed into this. So this is why tools like Babel are used to transform your modern code into old code, because modern code may not be supported on all browsers since they may not be updated. Okay, so the last part is modules. So modules are essentially simply files that contain JavaScript code, right? So why do we use modules? Basically, since our code gets very big, we split it up into modules, right? So a module is basically a file that contains some JavaScript code. As our application grows larger, we split the code into multiple files. These are called modules. So each module can be independently loaded into different files using directives like import and export. Right. Okay. The note here is a normal web page which you double click and open cannot access modules because of CORS security features. So it needs to be hosted on local server. So to do this in VS Code, I use a live server for extension. Over here, when you go on extension and look for live server, this when you enable it, you can essentially host it so that this doesn't get blocked. Okay, and modules always use strict mode. So for let's look at an example. Okay, module syntax. So you import a script as type equals to module. Let's go back over here. So what I do is put type equals to modules. Now this essentially works like a module, and I can split up code into multiple files. Now I can split up this code into multiple files, right? So just let me make a dummy file called greet.js. This simply the function greet, and what it does is console.log greet, right? So this is what it does. Now if I want to use this piece of code in my main code, so what I need to do is I need to export this code. So how do I export this code? I can use the keyword export, name of the function, right? And to export, you use these parentheses, not parentheses, these curly braces. So now I can export this function in this way. Now if I'm exporting in this way, I can import a function over here, import greet from, I need to provide a path. So /greet.js. Now I can run the function greet over here. Right. And let's check document inspect also, and you can see greet. It runs. So there are two kinds of exports. There is a default export and there is a named export. So what I did here is called named exporting. So every file can have one default export, one and only one default export. You can't have more than one default exports, right? So if I want to export it by default, so I can use export default greet, right? So now I can get rid of these curly braces from here. Again, I have saved. The code still runs, right? See, on refresh, you can get this. So this is how it works. So there are two types of exports. There are named exports and there are default exports. So for named exports, you always need to make sure they're exported as curly braces, and you can have multiple named exports. So I can have another function, another greet, and what this essentially is console.log is another greet, right? So I can set another greet. So now I can import both of these. But since they aren't default, I need to specify braces here too. So I need to import greet, and the other name was another greet, right? Another greet. Now I can run greet and another greet, both of them. Greet, this is another greet. So this is how they work. And yeah, you can rename them. So you can use as and the rename name, right? So if I want to rename greet, so I can do as G. So greet, no, there is no greet now, there is only G, right? So this is how it works. On the refresh, we can see greet, and this is an agree. So you can rename it, not an issue. And okay, so this was module, how it works. And to bundle all of these modules together, we have tools like Webpack. So modules are always bundled together and deployed to a server. So you don't deploy multiple files. Some tools like Webpack, what they do is they go through all of your JS files and they compile it down to a single file. So modules are bundled together with the help of build tools like Webpack. So how module bundles work? This is a very rough idea of how they work, right? So they look at the main module and figure out the dependencies in other module. So in our case, the main module is a module that the source that is here, that is our main module. So this main module has these greet and another greet as dependencies. So in order to run main, I need to know greet and I need to know another greet. So these are what are dependencies. Now we build a single file with all the modules replacing import calls with bundler function, right? What module bundler does is it figures out, well, it needs greet and another greet from this file. So it creates a new file, or it usually creates a new single file, and in that you basically put all your code in the order of dependencies and use bundle optimizations, some special bundle optimization, so that the code is optimized, right? So what are those techniques? You remove unreachable code, remove unused exports. So this is Webpack. So if you are interested, you can read more about Webpack over here. So okay, so what we have studied today is what you can use to build a to-do project. So this is what I expect you to be able to build from now, right? You should be able to build this. I mean, it's not easy, but you should try at least running it. Okay, so this is the to-do application. Okay, so you can basically add anything, add task, you can toggle it complete. You can so for this you need to know DOM manipulations. So if I add hello, it is added. I can toggle this as complete. Like if I toggle, I can create a strike. So what this is essentially I'm checking if this is either true or false. So if it's true, if the task is completed, then it gets a strike. If it isn't, you don't see a strike, and then I can delete it. So I've implemented local storage features too. Uh, in local storage, you can see from here. So go to application local storage. Here you can see everything in the local storage. So if I add this is also added in the local storage. If I add something else, this is also added into the local storage. So local storage is an additional complexity. If you want, you can add. If you don't want, you can leave it. Then you can toggle it complete, incomplete, like that. Right. So this is how it works. And I think this is a good point to stop. So what I have taught today is basically everything you need to know before starting React. I wanted to teach local storage and fetch, but it seems here I'm exceeding my time. So that's all today for today. And thank you so much. If you have any doubt, okay, and if you have any doubts, feel free to connect to me on Twitter. I'll upload the code and everything, whatever it is. I'll do it on Twitter. The handle is HC11dev. So thank you so much.
Guys, do you have any
To all your
questions?
efforts.
Yeah, Himanshu, continue.
Yes. Kudos to all your efforts, Himanshu. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Himanshu Bobde. I'm technical team 2 lead at GDSC BBC ONM. I'm really glad to announce that we are going to organize cybersecurity and data science events in the month of December. I really look forward for your active participation, and we promise to bring you something intriguing that will surely help you constructively. Thank you. Yes, Mayuresh, you can continue.
Yes, yes. Looking at the response of Hack Week, day one we had around 60 participants. Day two, the number increased to 100. And on day three, we expected a lot of people, but it's okay, no problem. 35 people is not a less number at all. So, looking at the response, definitely we will arrange uh, really great events in December. So, make sure you keep checking the chapter page. I'll put the chapter page link and Instagram link in the chat. And Mrunmay, can you please share the feedback form? I request everyone to fill
Yeah,
the
sure.
form,
I'll just share it out.
and only those students who have attended all the 3 days of Hack Week and are going to fill the feedback form. Only those students will get the certificate from Google. Others उनको नहीं मिलेगा. As simple as that. I'll put the chapter links in the chat.
Hey, I would like to add something that for Himanshu Chatpar. So, like, we would really like to thank you for giving your time and teaching us. As a JavaScript developer myself, there are a lot of things, which as a developer I was using, but why I was using it was, not that clear. And you taught us everything in very depth, why we are using this and how it is working behind the scene. So it was really very great. So yeah, thank you, Himanshu.
Himanshu, I
Thank you
would
so
also
much.
like to add the Babel kind of thing. I was not clear before how Babel works and what exactly Babel does. So I found that part very interesting to me. So thank you very much. And your precise way of teaching was very inspirational to both of us, me and Ankit as well. And we will try our level best to match your level in the next upcoming sessions.
Thank you so much, guys. I would like to conduct a Shekaran again if possible. Anyways, if you have any doubts, you can reach me on my Twitter. I'll share the PPT and the GitHub code for that in, I guess, 2-3 days, so that you get time to attempt it. And if you can't, it'll be present on my Twitter account. So if you want, you can follow me there. I'll put the link of the slides as well as the code for this to do application. Okay, and you can reach there for any doubts too.
Yeah. You guys can at the end, Himanshu said to create a to-do application. So you guys can try to do that with like most of the concepts he covered in this session are we will be using that only. And if you have any doubts, you can ask him or even us. You can we will forward your doubts to him. Okay.
Also, you don't need to go all aboard and do local storage and that. You can start with whatever you're comfortable with. Just start with taking input from the form and printing it on the screen. If you can do that, try to add toggle functionality. If you can do that, add delete functionality. If you can do that, then go to local storage. If you can do that too, try using fetch so that you can mock data response from servers. So in that way, you can increase complexity and get a project that is of your level. Right. So I really hope you should try all of this.
Also, guys, the link for our Instagram handle has been posted in the chat box here. So kindly follow to stay updated and be notified with all the upcoming events. Also join our chapter page to get mails and notified for the events, etc.
Yes, I have also shared all the. I have shared the chapter page. Please make sure that you join it. Yes, one more thing. All those students who have joined the chapter page and have attended the 3 events will get the certificate. Huh? So make sure that you join the chapter. That is very important. Okay, I'll stop the recording.